You mentioned it. You started right out of high school into the financial industry, and a lot of your roles were listed as officer, revenue officer, for instance. Can you talk about these types of revenue officer roles? How does this relate to the type of work you do now with your expertise in compliance, or does it at all? Or was there a jump from the sort of officer roles to the compliance roles?
Great questions. I spent many sleepless nights looking at the fan, trying to figure out how all this made sense. How my abstract work experience actually led me to where I am today. And here's what I think happened. So I had many officer roles in banking, and they range from retail branch management to compliance and privacy, sales roles in between. So I've worked in about every area of the bank that you can imagine, both, retail, so public facing, over the phone, back office, in lending. I was really driven to the compliance and the regulatory side of banking. So I realized pretty early in my career that there was some good work to be done there. A lot of fraud was starting to take off in the banking space in the early 2000s. And then banking has changed significantly between 2000 and say 2012, 2015. So if you can think of, just post 9/11. So we had a lot of anti-terrorism, Patriot Act regulations that we had to be well informed of. And responsible for. I felt a sense of duty, protecting, our money, our infrastructure, our citizens, because a lot of that money that was maybe illegitimately laundered within the banking system could be used to fund terrorist activities. So I had a big sense of duty to look out for those types of things. That's where it started. And looking for suspicious activity within transactions, within banking employees, so insider risk. And as the years progressed, we had a big recession. You talk about the Lehman Brothers in 2008, and started looking at compliance and lending and how we can protect ourselves and our country from another recession. And then that kind of just gradually grew to more cybersecurity-related compliance as banks were transforming digitally. Cybersecurity was more forefront. Breaches were happening more often. And so banking saw a big transformation during my time there, which I've always found really interesting. So I kind of followed more of a compliance path later in banking, and really enjoyed it. And somewhere in there, I had a brain surgery. So I suffered from apparently years of periodic strokes. The end result was a brain surgery, but essentially during those years, my veins were kinked together in knots, to be real basic about how I describe this, kinked together in knots, and there was leaking blood onto the right side of my brain, right side of your brain, frontal. So that kind of controls memory, decision making, impulse response. So I was changing. My personality was changing and shifting. Memory was becoming an issue. After the surgery, and I went through serious rehabilitation and went back to the workforce. Eventually, I made it back into banking. And at that time, I realized that I learned and processed information differently. So it was interesting because I was pretty rigid about a few different things. Prior to that, if people made eye contact or broke eye contact, I was always just validating people through eye contact and body language and posture and what they could remember and recite and what I could remember and recite, and being quick on facts. And then I couldn't learn anymore. With words, it was only pictures. And if I didn't do something right away, I didn't retain it. So I started really becoming interested in the mind and how it could heal itself, for one, which is miraculous in itself, but also all the different types of people there are, like how neurodivergent our world is, and what that all means at the end of the day, and just looking at people differently. And it was really eye-opening to me. And so I did have some experience with my own setback. We'll call it a setback, but I think it was a blessing in disguise with the surgery. We'll the brain injury, if you will. And so, eventually I ended up getting out of banking, Chris, not because I didn't love it, but you see through a recession and Lehman Brothers and the the days that are too big to fail, and you start getting spit on in stores and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really conducive to raising a family, which was where I was at in my life. And so I did a pretty big shift to startup world and working with entrepreneurs. I did a really ginormous shift, really. Went from, a banking job that was all I know to going into a world that was really unfamiliar. But I did it anyway, for the sake of having a little bit more fun, to be honest.
Have you seen Work Bites, the new security awareness training series from Infosec? Our team produced this series with 3 E's in mind, making security awareness training entertaining, engaging, and educational. Just go to infosecinstitute.com/free to learn more about this hilarious office comedy. And hey, let us know what you think about it.